Mark and Lisa had spent years searching for the perfect home. They wanted safety, peace, and a strong community, and when they found Oak Ridge Estates, it seemed like a dream come true. Located just outside Austin, Texas, Oak Ridge Estates was a gated community with beautiful houses, manicured lawns, and private security. It had everything they wanted: quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and a highly rated HOA that promised to maintain property values. But there was something they didn't know. Something no real estate agent mentioned. Something hidden deep within the HOA rules. Something that would put their lives in danger. The red flags begin. Their first few weeks in Oak Ridge Estates were perfect. The neighbors were welcoming, and the streets were spotless. Everything seemed too good to be true. Then, one evening, Lisa saw something strange. A few houses down, an elderly man collapsed on his front lawn. She and Mark rushed over to help, but his wife was already there, frantically trying to call 911. "We need an ambulance," Lisa said, pulling out her phone. That's when something bizarre happened. Two men in security uniforms appeared out of nowhere. No emergency services are allowed inside Oak Ridge Estates without HOA approval, one of them said. Lisa's jaw dropped. "What? This is an emergency. He's having a heart attack." But the guards stood firm. "That's the rule. We have our own private responders. They'll be here shortly." Lisa looked at the elderly man, his face pale, his breathing shallow. They didn't have time for this. Ignoring the guards, she hit call on her phone, but there was no signal. She checked again. No service. That's when she realized it wasn't her phone. The entire neighborhood was cut off from emergency calls. Lisa's heart pounded as she stared at her phone's blank screen. No service. No way to call for help. Mark grabbed the elderly man's wrist, checking for a pulse. It was weak. Too weak. His wife was in tears, begging the security guards to let an ambulance in. "This is insane," Lisa snapped. "You can't just block emergency services." One of the security guards, a tall man with a stern face and a badge that read HOA Enforcement, crossed his arms. "We can, and we do," he said flatly. "This community operates under private regulations. All emergency responses go through HOA-approved personnel." Lisa's hands shook. "That's not how the law works. You can't stop 911 from coming in." The other guard, a stocky man with a smug smirk, leaned in. "Ma'am, you signed the HOA agreement when you bought your home. Didn't you read the fine print?" Mark clenched his fists. He knew they had signed a massive contract with the HOA when they purchased the house, but he never imagined it would include something this extreme. Just then, a black SUV with tinted windows rushed into the street, stopping in front of them. Two men in grey uniforms jumped out, the so-called HOA Emergency Response Team. They weren't paramedics. They didn't have medical bags. They weren't even wearing badges. One of them knelt beside the elderly man and pressed 2 fingers to his neck. "Still breathing. We'll handle it," he muttered. Lisa expected them to start CPR to check his vitals, but instead they picked him up and carried him toward the SUV. His wife screamed, "Where are you taking him? He needs a hospital." The first guard placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "He'll be taken to our private care facility within the neighborhood." Mark's stomach churned. Something was very, very wrong. Lisa wasn't having it. She sprinted towards the SUV, trying to stop them, but one of the guards stepped in her way, grabbing her arm. "Stop," he warned. "You're violating HOA protocol." Lisa ripped her arm away. I don't give a damn about your protocol. You're putting his life in danger." The SUV sped off. The elderly man's wife collapsed in sobs. Lisa wrapped her arms around her, her own body trembling with shock and fury. Mark exhaled sharply. "We need to find out what the hell's going on." As they turned to leave, the first guard spoke again, his voice eerily calm. "You should be careful," he said. "You don't want to be the next ones needing an emergency response." Mark and Lisa walked back to their house in stunned silence. The quiet streets of Oak Ridge Estates, once so inviting, now felt like a prison. The HOA wasn't just enforcing strict rules, they were controlling lives. Lisa was shaking with anger. They kidnapped that man, Mark. His wife had no say. What if he needed a real hospital? Mark clenched his jaw. "This isn't just about emergency services. They've cut us off from the outside world. No cell signal, no 911. What the hell is this place?" Lisa stopped walking. A chilling thought hit her. What if other people have tried to call for help before? Mark's face darkened. If the HOA had done this once, they had done it before. They needed proof. Breaking into the HOA office. That night, while most of the neighborhood slept, Mark and Lisa made their move. The HOA headquarters was a sleek modern building near the entrance of the community. It looked harmless on the outside, just an office for paperwork, complaints, and board meetings. But Mark had seen the security guards enter earlier. He had seen the locked doors. This was more than just an office. Lisa picked the lock on the side door, a skill she picked up back in college when she kept locking herself out of her dorm. The door clicked open, and they slipped inside. The place was spotless, not a single paper left on the desks, no personal belongings. It was too clean, like no one actually worked there. Lisa turned on her phone's flashlight and scanned the room. Then she saw it. A locked filing cabinet with a label that made her blood run cold. Medical incidents, restricted files. Lisa and Mark exchanged a look. Bingo. Mark grabbed a letter opener from a desk and jimmied the lock. The drawer slid open, revealing hundreds of files, each one marked with a name, a date, and a status. Lisa flipped through them. Some were marked relocated, others were marked terminated. Her fingers trembled as she pulled one out at random. A woman named Margaret L. Stevens. Under incident details, the note read, "Collapsed in home. Unauthorized 911 call attempt. Intervention successful. Status, relocated." Lisa's breath caught in her throat. Relocated? Where? Mark grabbed another file. This one was worse. Name, Christopher D. Hall. Incident, car accident within HOA limits. Unauthorized call for external assistance. Status, terminated. Lisa gasped. Terminated? What does that mean? Before Mark could respond, they heard it. A low beep. Then a red light blinking from the ceiling. Security alarm. Lisa's stomach dropped. They know we're here. Mark grabbed a handful of files and stuffed them in his jacket. We need to go. Now. Lisa shoved the cabinet shut and bolted for the door, but just as she reached it, headlights flooded through the windows. Outside, 2 black SUVs screeched to a stop. The HOA's private security had arrived, and this time, Mark and Lisa were the emergency. The SUV's headlights cast eerie shadows across the office walls. Lisa's pulse pounded in her ears. They were caught. Mark yanked Lisa's arm, pulling her toward the back door. We can't let them trap us in here, he hissed. Lisa's hands were shaking, but she managed to twist the doorknob. Locked. Heavy footsteps echoed outside. The guards were coming fast. Mark grabbed a nearby chair and slammed it against the window. Crash! Glass shattered everywhere. Without hesitation, he climbed through, pulling Lisa after him. "Hey, stop right there!" a deep voice boomed behind them. Lisa turned. Two massive guards were already inside the office, guns holstered, but ready. Lisa and Mark sprinted across the manicured lawn, ducking behind hedges as a flashlight beam swept past them. They needed to get home, to get out. But as they reached their street, they froze. The neighborhood trap, every single street light in Oak Ridge Estates, suddenly shut off. The once bright community was now a pitch-black bus maze. Then a new light appeared. One by one, porch lights flickered on, not from timers, but from inside the houses. Windows slid open. Silhouettes of neighbors stood in their doorways, watching, waiting. Mark's stomach dropped. "Lisa?" "They know." A chill ran down Lisa's spine. The neighbors weren't surprised. They weren't calling for help. They were part of it. The HOA wasn't just a board of directors. It was an entire system. A network of people who controlled everything and everyone inside. Lisa grabbed Mark's hand. "We have to run." But as they turned the corner, the SUVs blocked the road. 5 guards, dressed in their usual grey uniforms, stepped out. Calm, confident, like they'd done this before. The final warning. The lead guard, the same one from earlier, smirked. "You broke into private property," he said smoothly. "That's a serious offense." Mark clenched his fists. "You're the ones breaking the law, blocking emergency services. People are dying because of you." The guard shook his head. "You don't understand." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This community is protected. We don't rely on the government. We don't let outsiders in. We handle our own." Lisa's blood turned to ice. "You mean you get rid of your own?" The guard didn't deny it. Instead, he pulled something from his pocket. A contract. "Sign this," he said, handing Mark a pen. "A confidentiality agreement. You forget everything you saw tonight. You stay in line, and you live a good, quiet life here in Oak Ridge Estates." Mark stared at the paper. His mind raced. If they signed, they'd be prisoners forever, trapped in a place where calling for help was a crime. If they refused, Lisa grabbed his hand, squeezing it tightly. They had no way out. No one to call. But then, in the distance, a siren. A real one. Lisa's heart leapt. Someone, somehow, had called the police. The guards tensed. The lead one cursed under his breath. Damn it. Then, just as quickly as they appeared, they stepped back. The guards got into their SUVs. The neighbors shut their doors, and within seconds, the entire street was silent again, as if nothing ever happened. The truth exposed. The next morning, Lisa and Mark packed their bags. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't tell anyone. They just left. Days later, Lisa discovered something horrifying. The elderly man, the one who collapsed. There was no record of him in any hospital, no obituary, no sign he had ever existed, just like the others. Mark and Lisa tried to report everything to the police, the media, even the FBI, but Oak Ridge Estates was still there, still operating, still keeping its secrets, and worst of all, people were still moving in, not knowing what they were walking into. The final warning. Months later, Lisa received a letter in the mail, no return address, no signature, just a single sentence. You were lucky. Don't push your luck. She and Mark never spoke of Oak Ridge Estates again. But sometimes at night, Lisa would check her phone and wonder if somewhere in that perfect little neighborhood, another person was dialing 911 and no one was answering.